Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's edition of Objective Health. I'm your host today. My name's Elliot. Join with me in the studio, we have Doug, Erica, and Tiff.
Hello.
Right, so in today's show, we're going to be talking again about a topic that's come to the forefront over the past week or so. It's been going on for a while, a couple of years now, and it's progressively getting worse and worse. And this is big social media platforms deplatforming, banning essentially alternative health news websites. And this started around, is it 2018, 2017? They started doing this. Could have been a little bit earlier than that. But as I said, it's been getting progressively worse over the years. And now we have recent news that one of the largest alternative health websites, known as GreenMed Info, probably many of our listeners are familiar with this website. They recently posted an article, it was this week on Wednesday. And it's titled GreenMed Info deleted from Instagram and LinkedIn. Facebook next. Has the great social media purge of 2020 begun? So in the article, they're essentially describing how one day went to log into their Instagram account, and randomly, for essentially no reason, they were told that the account had now been banned or had been disabled. Now, on their Instagram account, they had, how many followers did they have?
90,000.
90,000 followers. So in the context of Instagram, that's a pretty large following. Now, it's not much compared with their Facebook following. I believe their Facebook account has 550,000 followers. But in the article, the owner of the GreenMed Info website is named Sayed G. He was talking about how previously what they have noticed over the years is that their reach on Facebook has been significantly reduced. So they're only kind of reaching, they might make a post and they might only reach, say, 0.05% of their followers, meaning that the post is not showing up on the stream of people who are following that page. So there was definitely some censorship going on there on Facebook. But with Instagram, again, they had a pretty big following. And yeah, they've randomly been disabled. I think this comes as these social media platforms have been doing this to many of these kinds of alternative health websites. They've been doing it to alternative health documentaries, many people who are sharing information about the truth regarding COVID-19, highlighting the flaws in the conventional arguments and pointing out the deception. Many of these people or these companies, websites, etc., they are being deplatformed and shut down effectively. And so, apparently the reason given by Instagram was that they were posting harmful false information. So in that article, Sergi gives an example of the kind of thing that they were sharing between the dates of July 8th and July 30th. One example of that is a screenshot of I think it's a tweet, or maybe it's an Instagram post posted by Ron Paul. And that is essentially just pointing out some of the flaws in the argument of the CDC, what they're saying about COVID, pointing out about how the deaths are basically way overblown, how this can no longer be classified as an epidemic, and essentially just highlighting many of the things wrong with the conventional standpoint on COVID. And so as all of this stuff with COVID has basically, the big social media platforms are now starting to shut down any argument that goes against the conventional viewpoint, and they are seemingly gonna carry on. Um,
Well, the stupid thing about the Green Med Info one in particular, I mean, they're essentially like they do articles and stuff like that, of course, but they're essentially a database of natural health articles that have been published in peer-reviewed journals. So they have a huge database of all this information about, natural remedies or different alternative medicine practices and all these kinds of things that have actually been published in mainstream journals. So it's kind of like the whole idea that it's like fake news or misinformation. They might be able to argue that with some of their articles or something like that, but generally, if you read stuff on GreenMed Info, it's like everything is sourced really, really well. So it's kind of just a bunch of BS, and it's really like what it comes down to is we don't like this. It doesn't match our narrative, so we're gonna tell you that you're setting, spreading misinformation. So we're shutting you down.
Well, this was kind of all laid out anyway during that Event 201 simulation that was held in October of 2019, where they talked about how the methods that they would need to use in order to combat like anyone who goes against whatever the official narrative would be, like what they could do and the steps that they would take in order to keep misinformation from spreading. So it shouldn't be surprising, and it's not surprising that this has happened.
It's still ire inducing though.
Yeah, yeah.
It's
Book burning.
Yeah, that's exactly
and
what it is.
that's what Google even enacted a name just like that, Tiff, called Great Digital Book Burning Event in 2019. And that's when they started removing, the searches for GreenMed Info, Mercola.com, KellyBrogan.com. And, so they basically no longer make that information available. But as Elliot was saying in the beginning, this is starting back in 2017. I mean, we followed it extensively in the vaccine arena, where you just, when was it that Amazon was not allowing access to videos, or they wanted to ban books that question vaccine safety? So we just see it's like a doubling down happening. And I will say, though, in that link that Damien had there showing the article on GreenMed Info, that Sayer G has not lost hope. He actually thinks it's a great thing that it's happening because people can see the censorship and they're actually more eager for information. And people are finding workarounds, like they did create a Telegram channel. If anyone's on Telegram, where you can see essentially what you would see on Instagram, all the memes. And I even noticed, because I do follow GreenMed Info on Instagram, and they were just daily inundating people with all the great memes about all the BS that was happening. And I was like, wow, these guys are really going for it. And then they get banned,
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of not surprising. It's funny. They were talking about how Elliot was talking about before about how on Facebook they had noticed that their reach wasn't, they weren't getting to people on Facebook, despite the fact that they were sharing stuff. And I thought about it, and I've been following GreenMed Info basically since it started. And I cannot remember the last time I saw one of their posts on Facebook. And like the same could be said for like Mercola, SOT. I never get updates on SOT stuff, even though I do interact with their posts all the time. So yeah, I mean, it's kind of like, and even like I'm sure that Objective Health doesn't get out to the number of people who are actually following it on Facebook or other social media channels or something like that. So it's just they have so many ways now of doing it in sneaky ways and like censorship without being overt about it, but they still in this case did go overt about it. So I guess it's kind of like, in a way, Sayer G's right. It's kind of like, well, we know that we're doing good if they're going to those extents to actually silence them.
Yeah, even if they're not outright banned, they can be shadow banned.
Right.
Like you said, like no one knows Like if they're signed up for notifications for your site, they're not getting notifications. It's not coming up in their recommended for you portions of their social media. So they don't have to outright ban people in order to kind of lessen the range of the message that they're putting out. But it's just become so blatantly obvious, and they're so desperate to make sure that no one speaks out against the mainstream narrative that they have to go to these links.
Yeah. Well, it's funny, Michaela Peterson, who we interviewed on this show actually way back in the day, before anybody else did actually. She recently has been running into this kind of problem as well. And I mean, she's not really, I mean, she says controversial things, particularly from a diet perspective. You know, she's promoting the carnivore diet, or the lion diet as she calls it. But she had her YouTube channel demonetized. And recently Joe Rogan was moving all his podcasts over to Spotify, a big deal. It was in the news. Probably heard about that. And some of his old shows didn't actually make it to Spotify, to the platform. And it's all ones that you could imagine, like, you know, Alex Jones and other kind of Milo Yiannopoulos, I think, Ben Shapiro maybe, like all these ones of kind of the right-winger type guys didn't make it over. But Michaela Peterson's didn't either. And I was kind of like, isn't that strange? Because at the time, like, you know, I watched that podcast and it didn't seem like she was saying anything that controversial, except in the world of diets, like saying, yeah, you know, you can survive and thrive on nothing but meat, which, you know, in some circles, certainly that would seem controversial, but it's not like, I don't know, it's not like she was, you know, debunking COVID or anything like that. So I was kind of surprised that they would be like, no, Michaela, sorry, you're gone.
Yeah, it's sort of, I mean, this has been going on for a long time, right? It's nothing new, at least over the past couple of years, and it seems that people have just kind of grown to accept it, that it's going to happen. But it sets a very dangerous precedent, right? In that, Sayed G in that article rightly points out that it's breaching freedom of speech, right? And although we tend to consider, you know, myself at least, social media, it's not, you know, it's not you speaking in real life, right? So I get the impression that people don't tend to apply the concept of freedom of speech to social media. It's easy for there to be somewhat of a divide, right? I think there is. But he rightly points out in this article, he says, we believe that the censorship wave is extremely relevant to the health and even political freedom of this entire country. If you inhibit free speech or access to the free flow of information, you are not only violating our constitutional rights and right to the medical ethical principle of informed consent, but you are moving down the well-trodden path towards atrocities related to dehumanization and even genocide, right? And so unless you look at history and you really study how that might work, then it's easy to kind of normalize the idea of of internet censorship and what's the word, and to kind of pass it off as though it's nothing important. But actually, I think he's bang on the money, right? I think it certainly does lead. If you can make it so that people normalize this idea that the authorities can come in and essentially shut down anything that they do not want to be said, then again, it makes them ripe for accepting that in real life, right? And social media is simply an extension of real life, if that makes any sense. And so what I'm trying to say is that it's extremely dangerous. It's very dangerous that people are accepting this, and that this is going on without anyone really knowing much about it, because it means that actually, you know, we don't know where this leads, or we can have a rough idea of where this leads, and it's not good.
Definitely.
Yeah.
It kind of
Well,
seems. Sorry, go ahead, Tiff.
I was just going to add that it's not just alternative health websites that are being shadow banned or outright having their channels deleted or their Instagram accounts deleted or their Twitter accounts deleted. There's been loads of alternative, I guess you could say journalists or social people who make social commentary who's had their YouTube channels deleted. David Icke was one. Alex Jones was his YouTube deleted.
Mm,
Um, there's Del Bigtree at the Highwire. His was just deleted. The Crow House with Max Egan. Uh, High Impact Flicks. Dan Dix of Press for Truth. Those guys, they're not, well, Del Bigtree is, but they're not speaking about health all the time, but they talk a lot about COVID. And since the whole COVID hoax was perpetrated, their channels have been
mhm.
deleted or demonetized, or, they're forced to seek out alternative platforms to put out their
Yeah.
content, like Big Shoot or Library or some other D Live or some other
Hmm.
platform, which, I mean, yeah, that's a good way to reach people and make sure your message is still getting out, but it has nowhere near the reach that YouTube has. Like everybody uses YouTube.
Hmm. Yeah. It kind of seems like we're heading toward a time where it's kind of like there's a cutoff. You know what I mean? Where it's kind of like if you had found this stuff beforehand, before the Great Purge, it's like you can still get access to that information. You can still, like, we all know about Green Med Info, we all know about
Mhm.
Mercola, all those kinds of things. So we can still, like, take it upon ourselves and go to those places to find the information that we want to find. But if you didn't before know about that kind of stuff, and you're maybe just starting to kind of get into alternative health, alternative perspectives on health, that kind of thing, it's like you're going to be kind of lost because
Mhm.
those things, you're not going to get them through all these different streams that people are usually getting this kind of information from, right? I mean, and this gets into the whole idea of, these social media platforms actually being monopolies. And, is it right? Because, they use the argument all the time, well, we're a private company, we can censor whoever the hell we want. Which, from one perspective, okay, fine, that's true. But from another perspective, it's like if you have a monopoly on this kind of, platform that the whole world is on, do you have the right to kick somebody off that? Can you eliminate someone's voice from the infosphere, essentially? I mean, nothing's stopping Green Med Info from still putting articles up on their website, but unless you know about that website and you go there deliberately, you're not going to find it. No one is going to stumble upon this unless, there's, well, maybe somebody should start up a social media platform specifically for alternative views. I guess this is what BitChute is supposed to be. But anyway, I guess what I'm saying is that it seems like there's a divide. It's like there's the people who know about this stuff already, and it can probably be applied to many different subcultures, right? There's the people who know about it already, and those who don't know about it have very little chance of actually finding it at this point.
Mhm. Well, that's where liking and sharing videos comes in. Like if you go to not just videos, but articles as well, if you go directly to Green Med Info's website and you like one of their articles and you decide to post it on Facebook, that's a way to kind of spread the message to other people that wouldn't normally just go directly to Green Med Info.
Mm-hmm.
But then at the same time, you have, I guess recently, there was an Australian woman, a pregnant Australian woman, who just posted something about an upcoming protest that was coming up, and the police actually went to her house and arrested her. And
Yeah.
I think people seeing that kind of get dissuaded or are afraid to actually share anything anymore. So uh, these social media platforms, they can get away with censoring people, but also there's a lot of self-censorship that's going on as well.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Well, the other thing too is that when you share articles from these alternative health sites, I know Mercola was talking about the fact that when anybody shares one of his articles on Twitter now, a warning comes up that says that it's a potential phishing site, that it could be maliciously, putting spyware on your computer or, stealing your email address or something along those lines, right? That's the kind of warning that they're giving now. Now, anybody who knows Mercola knows that it's a reputable site and they're not doing any kind of like dodgy backroom internet kind of dealings in that sense. So even if a person was like, if I was to share an article about, the COVID lockdown is bullshit from Mercola.com and I put it up on social media, and it's going to have all these like warnings on it now, like the warning like he's getting on Twitter, but there's also the disinformation warnings that you get on Facebook all the time now, where like they've had a fact checker, go through it and stamp it as fake news or whatever. And you have to actually uncover it to be able to see it. So that's another level of dissuading people from actually seeing the content. It takes a certain kind of person to be like, well, I want to actually see this,
Yeah, and it's almost like now, if you are not already familiar with this kind of information, if you're not already clued up into what's going on, it's just very, very, very difficult to access it organically. Previously, if you'd have put in a normal Google search or whatever like that, then it would have come up and there would have been this free flow of information, which again was not conventionally accepted, but which was more aligned with what is true. Whereas now it's so difficult. Unfortunately, there are many people who were, familiar with this and are kind of actively trying their best to, to bypass those restrictions. It just seems as though they've made it so hard and so difficult, and it also is a testament, or it indicates that actually they really must be quite scared. They must see it as a real threat to their authority, and it's almost like they're clutching, they're grasping at it, and yeah, it's quite disturbing nonetheless, and it very, makes me angry whenever I read something like this. But it's just going to get worse and worse, I think, because no one's standing up to them. In fact, no one can stand up to them.
Yeah.
No one can stand up to big tech or, these massive behemoths. There's no use. There has to be seems as though grassroots movements and kind of collecting together in individual or let's say autonomous groups is going to be the only way that people can freely share information.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting you say that about no one doing anything. One of the articles we were going to discuss for today happened back in June. It was banned YouTube Mercola videos. It was like June 17th. And just trying to share it and open it before the show, if you didn't already have it opened, required now not just easily accessing the article straight from the link that was shared, but you have to join the subscriber newsletter. Is that right, Doug?
Yeah.
But in the article, I just wanted to point this out. President Trump actually took steps to deal with this censorship issue on May 28th, and he signed an executive order on preventing online censorship, which requires the Federal Communications Commission to clarify regulations under Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act. And that act is what so far has allowed social media platforms to pick and choose what they allow on their site while still being afforded legal protections. Now, I don't know where that's gone since then, but the fact that now you can no longer just get on Mercola's site and read these, you have to join email groups, prevents a lot of people from doing cursory research on their lunch break or in their time. Now you got to go through more steps, and it's like a gate that's keeping people out, especially if you only have limited amount of time, and your access is now more hindered. I think though that this is an important article, and people should have a look at it, because some of the examples of censorship are the documentary Plandemic, with Judy Mikovits, that was banned and hidden. And another one was the interview with the doctors, Dr. Dan Erickson and Arten Masihi, co-owners of the Accelerated Urgent Care in Bakersfield. And all they were doing was questioning the accuracy of COVID-19 mortality stats. I mean, these were just two pretty normal guys, you know what I mean? And to ban information like that, seems silly. You know, I mean, if you are convinced that you're doing the right thing for the public around the world, why wouldn't you let other people have opposing viewpoints, and then your information stands on the merit alone that it's true? But the fact that the narrative keeps getting regurgitated, and then people are coming out with videos really questioning it, doing a phenomenal job at presenting references and resources, and they're banned. I mean, we said it in our interview with Joe Quinn, like, they're just showing you that they're full of shit.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's more of a confirmation. Like,
well, not only are they full of shit, they know that they're full of shit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah. I mean, it's like you were saying earlier, Elliot, like, I think they're scared. I think that's basically what it is. They know that the entire narrative, and I'm not just talking about the COVID narrative, I mean their entire narrative, like everything. It's a house of cards. And they're trying to seal a monopoly on the information that can get out there. Now, they did it with the old school press and everything. Like, you know, you cannot really find like a television news station that's kind of putting out truth for the most part, or a newspaper or a magazine or any of those kinds of things. You know, they managed to get a monopoly on those streams. But it seems like the internet kind of like squeaked through their grasp a little bit anyway. And now they're trying to clamp down completely. Any of that kind of truth, alternative information, different perspectives, something that goes against the mainstream narrative is being systematically wiped out. Or at least hindered to the point where the majority of people aren't going to see it unless you actually are making an effort to see it. I mean, who knows? Like, you know, this channel might not last forever, right? We've been lucky so far. Maybe I shouldn't have said that. Touch wood. But and yeah, I mean, who knows? Like, maybe though before long, you actually will see it where there is no GreenMed info anymore. There is no Mercola.com anymore. That could be, you know, this might be being rolled out in stages, and, you know, that might be the future, and that would be a very scary future indeed.
Mm-hmm.
So do we have any solutions? Is there anything anyone can do?
Start
Come on,
your
guys,
own internet.
I'm trying to be the
That's
optimist.
what I was going to say. Start your own internet.
Yeah. You don't like the way Facebook does it, you start your own Facebook.
Well, I've been actually printing up copies of, you know, articles from GreenMed Info and Mercola, just informational stuff, you know, actual paper articles, and just leaving them around for people that might be interested. You know what I mean?
That's old school.
Old school. Hosting movie events, you know, like, you know, maybe outside on your lawn, have a movie event. I don't know, you know, sending copies of videos to people that might be interested. So I don't know what else the solutions are. Calling people on the phone and telling them. I don't know.
You gotta go old school.
You can share stuff on BitChute and Library TV are growing though.
It's true.
So I think the decentralized kind of platforms might fill in that niche if they get too heavy-handed with all of that.
It's possible. Yeah.
And one last thing that Sayer did say in the video that's in that article that Damien had up was that, you know, it just left my brain just like that. I must have just got a zap from it.
It must have been really important. And you got zapped.
Sorry about that, guys. It's
That's
gone. It'll probably come back. Terrible, terrible.
Yeah. I mean, there's these alternative platforms coming up, right? So, like you said, Damien, there's BitChute, there's all these kinds of things. But ultimately, I wouldn't hold my breath with this kind of stuff. I don't have much hope. I just think it's maybe I'm a little bit pessimistic, but I just think
because how
that,
long will those
yeah,
alternative platforms be allowed to exist?
exactly, precisely, right? So
Yeah.
it's like it might eventually get to the point. It seems that it's going down the road towards full, complete censorship, and and you're not going to be able to communicate in the way that you want to communicate. You're not going to be able to exert free speech, or you're not going to be afforded free speech, and it's going to be something that we have to get our head around and kind of learn to accept and unfortunately live through. And this is what tends to happen, right? In when you have some kind of totalitarian regime which seeks full control over its people, it's like, yeah, one of the first things that goes is free speech. And so it's an excellent. Sorry, go ahead.
Maybe it's something that I wouldn't say needs to happen, or maybe the ramifications of such draconian censorship can actually, in the end, turn out to be a good thing. Like, in a way, maybe it can make people start to network in real life and start to form like grassroots movements, word of mouth, talking to your neighbors, coming up with solutions on your own. And people maybe at that point will actually see just how ridiculous and fascistic that governments all around the world are becoming. So it could be a way for a lot of people in the world whose eyes are closed. Maybe it can open their eyes to what's really going on, and they will be forced essentially to become more creative and to actually speak with people in real life. Maybe that's something that needs to happen in order for all of this to eventually end.
Yeah, that's what he did say. I remembered. Don't be afraid. You sparked it. Don't be afraid. I know for us on the show, we've all known about a lot of things for a lot of time, and we keep it to ourselves. You know what I mean? So don't be afraid now to share, that's bullshit. Like, instead of self-censoring anymore. I mean, what have you got to lose now?
Yeah.
Share what you know. Knowledge protects.
Yeah, indeed. And we can hope for a better future. We can hope for a better outcome. We may not see it in this lifetime, but we'll see how things go, I guess. That's the motto of this show, I think.
Wait and see.
Yeah, wait and see. We can never be sure, but we have to, faith that there's maybe hope down the road, perhaps. Yeah. So, I mean, a bit of a depressing topic, but as usual, is there anything else that we haven't touched on? Is there anything else that people want to share before we
When there's
before
a
we
will,
close up?
there's a way.
When there's a will, there's a way. Okay. Right. Well, yeah. Well, in that case, thanks to all my co-hosts. Thanks to our listeners. If you enjoyed the show, if you are outraged by the censorship, if you agree with anything that we've kind of said, we do one of these shows roughly every week. So feel free to get in contact. You can drop us a comment. You can subscribe to our show. Let us know how you find it. And we'll see you in the future for more shows. So yeah, like and subscribe, and we'll see you next week.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.